I wasn't supposed to hear it. The garage door had clicked shut behind me with its usual mechanical groan when her voice carried from the den. That performative laugh she uses for her circle, the one that sounds like wind chimes made of glass. I'm Richard Cartwright, 42, operations director at a freight company in Milwaukee. I've built my career on precision, on understanding systems, on knowing when a network is functioning and when it's breaking down under invisible strain. Then I heard it, cutting through the ambient noise of our house. One trick. That's all it takes with him. I didn't storm in. I didn't announce myself. I just stood there in the mudroom with my hand still on the doorknob while the refrigerator hummed its endless monotone song. Through the doorway, I could see her phone on speaker, propped against a decorative candle we'd bought on some weekend trip I could barely remember. Her 2 book club friends were offering validation in that particular frequency women use when they're confirming something they all already know. Veronica sounded victorious, like she'd cracked a code. The examples came rapid fire. When I pushed back on her plans, affection vanished like smoke. When I suggested budget constraints for some renovation she'd been planning, silence descended for days, thick and suffocating. When I reached for connection, intimacy, just basic human warmth, it became a bargaining tool, a commodity traded on her terms. Your brain does strange archaeology in those first moments of clarity. The weekend I couldn't make her impromptu dinner party because of a work crisis. 3 days of Arctic treatment followed, her moving through the house like I was furniture. The furniture discussion where I mentioned savings goals, trying to be responsible about our future. She went mute until I apologized for having the audacity to care about our financial stability. The pattern had been there all along, woven into the fabric of our daily life, and I'd been too close to see the design. I climbed the stairs calmly, 1 foot after another, my hand sliding along the banister we'd refinished together years ago. Our bedroom was dark except for streetlight cutting across the wall in a pale geometric slice. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at dust particles glowing in that pale beam, each one floating in its own tiny orbit. I build logistics networks for a living. I troubleshoot supply chains through Wisconsin blizzards and highway closures that would paralyze lesser systems. That night, sitting in the dark with the sound of her laughter still echoing in my head, I realized I'd been treating my marriage like a system that would self-correct with enough patience, enough goodwill, enough time. She'd been training me like Pavlov's dog, and I'd been ringing the bell myself. I wanted facts, not feelings. I needed data, not emotional speculation. The facts were simple and brutal. For months, maybe years if I was honest, partnership had been replaced with manipulation so subtle I'd mistaken it for normal marriage friction. There's a clarity that comes when the puzzle finally assembles itself, when all those scattered pieces suddenly lock into a picture you can't unsee. I thought about small signs I'd excused, rationalized, explained away. The way she choreographed our entire social calendar and called it spontaneity, as if her preferences were just natural laws we both followed. The public affection that evaporated the moment we were alone, like she was performing for an audience that didn't exist in our actual home. The subtle contempt when I suggested anything outside her preferred narrative, that slight narrowing of her eyes that said I was disrupting her script. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a buddy asking about Saturday's hike, something we'd mentioned weeks ago. I typed yes before I could second-guess it, before that familiar voice in my head could ask whether Veronica might need me for something. When had I started living on standby, my entire life in a holding pattern around her decisions? I thought about weight distribution in freight, about the physics that govern everything I do at work. Too much weight on one axle, you burn it out, you destroy the machinery that's supposed to carry the load. We'd been fishtailing for a long time, the whole marriage unstable and listing. I'd kept correcting, adjusting, compensating. She'd enjoyed the instability, the power of keeping me off balance. I prefer measurable plans, concrete objectives, systems that make sense. So I made one simple and clear: remove the lever from the machine. Stop responding to the conditioning. Break the pattern that had wrapped around me like invisible wire. She came upstairs later smelling like expensive shampoo and some lotion that cost more than my work boots. "Hey," I said, my voice neutral. She smiled, that automatic smile that meant nothing, and slid into bed without reaching for me, without that performative affection she displayed when she wanted something. That used to sting, used to send me spiraling into wondering what I'd done wrong. That night, it was just information, just data to be noted and filed. I didn't sleep much. Instead, I made lists in my head, inventories of the life I'd let slip away. Gym 3 days a week, hike Saturday without asking permission, call my brother weekly instead of when Veronica deemed it acceptable, schedule that physical I'd been putting off, oil change, new running shoes to replace the ones wearing through. Nothing revolutionary or dramatic, just territories I was reclaiming, acre by acre. Around 2 a.m., with the house silent except for her breathing beside me, I remembered something my father taught me about driving on ice when I was 16. Don't overcorrect when you start to slide. Point where you want to go, then hold steady. Trust the physics. By morning, I set my running shoes by the door where I could see them, a small declaration of intent. Veronica drifted into the kitchen in her robe and asked if I was coming to dinner with her friends this weekend, the same tone she'd used to confirm I'd take out the trash. I have plans, I said, pouring coffee with steady hands. Micro-expression, surprise flickering across her face, quickly smoothed into a shrug that tried to seem careless. Something had shifted, not just with her but with me. The ground had moved. 2 days later, Veronica drifted into the kitchen with that bright, expectant energy she wears when anticipating compliance, when she's already planned how the conversation will go. I was packing trail mix and water bottles for the hike, checking my gear with the thoroughness I usually reserve for work projects. Big plans? She asked, voice light and curious, fishing. Early start. I'll be out most of the day. I didn't elaborate, didn't justify. Tiny pause, a beat of recalibration. We were going to look at furniture with Rachel. I mentioned it last week. Before, I would have offered to reschedule immediately, would have apologized for the conflict I hadn't created. Hope you find something good, I said, zipping the backpack. Her smile stumbled, caught mid-performance. The week stacked similar moments like bricks building a new foundation. When I asked her to check with me before committing our weekend, to treat my time as equally valuable as hers, she went silent, that polite, distant silence she used to deploy like a tactical weapon. Years ago, that would have sent me into damage control mode, scrambling to fix whatever I'd supposedly broken. Now I answered emails, hit the gym, slept fine. The silence wasn't punishment anymore. It was just weather, and I'd learned to bring my own coat. Tuesday brought the real test, the first serious challenge to this new system. A warehouse management system crashed during second shift, and I stayed late managing the crisis, rerouting shipments, keeping clients calm. I texted I'd be late, simple and factual. When I finally got home after 10, takeout containers lined the counter like evidence at a crime scene, positioned for maximum visual impact. We were supposed to go to Nicole's, she said, her voice carrying that particular injury she'd perfected. You said you'd make it work. I said I'd try. We had trucks stranded across 3 states. I fixed it, got everyone moving again. Right. Work comes first. Always work. The familiar script, the familiar accusation. Tonight it did, I said calmly, meeting her eyes. Tomorrow might not. That's how priorities work when you're building something that matters. That used to earn me Arctic silence, days of cold shoulder and withdrawn affection. She shrugged, took her food to the couch, turned the TV louder, volume as commentary. Thursday, she tried the old leverage play, the one that used to work without fail. I'd booked a tree crew for Saturday to handle the oak that was getting too close to the power lines. She wanted to reschedule because Rachel was coming over to photograph the living room for some blog feature. Crew had an opening for this weekend. I took it. They're booked through November otherwise. The smirk arrived right on schedule. Well, we'll see how much you miss me tonight, she said playfully, trailing a finger across my shoulder, the promise and threat wrapped in silk. Okay, I said and went back to reading. She didn't expect okay. She expected pursuit, negotiation, the familiar dance. The game needs pursuit to function, needs someone chasing. She went upstairs early, her footsteps deliberate on the stairs. By the weekend, the pattern was clear as a flowchart. Every time I didn't bend, didn't fold to her preference, she cycled through the same sequence. Cold withdrawal, strategic sarcasm, or sudden sweetness deployed like a precision tool. Saturday morning, she appeared in the doorway wearing the silk robe that used to derail any plan, any resolve, asked what I wanted for breakfast in that soft voice she reserves for negotiation. I'm good, I said, lacing my boots. Tree crew starts in 10 minutes. Her expression recalculated in real time, adjusting to new data. That afternoon, after the work was done. You've been distant lately. Is everything okay? Talk to me. Everything's organized, I said, cleaning the chainsaw blade. I'm catching up on things I let slide. Things like sleep that didn't come from exhaustion, exercise that made me feel like myself, lunch with my brother, where I didn't check my phone every 5 minutes. Sunday morning, I decided to speak cleanly, to lay it out in plain language. When you pull back affection to manipulate me into doing what you want, it doesn't make me want to move toward you. It makes the whole thing feel cheap and transactional. She blinked, genuinely surprised. I don't do that. I would never. I'm not asking you to agree with my assessment. I'm telling you how it lands on my end of this marriage. And I'm telling you I'm not participating in that pattern anymore. Silence stretched between us like a bridge neither wanted to cross. Something old in me wanted to rush in, fill the space with apologies and backpedaling. I let the silence stand, let it mean what it meant. She finally laughed, but it sounded hollow. You're being dramatic, overanalyzing everything like you always do. I'm being specific. There's a difference. She took her coffee to the living room. I took mine to the garage, finally organized the workbench I'd been meaning to sort for months. Amazing how many tasks you let slide while waiting for permission to exist fully in your own house. The following week tightened the screws of the old system trying to reassert itself. Whenever I held my line, refused to bend, she performed for an audience, narrating me to her friends on speakerphone with the volume just loud enough for me to hear. He's on this independence kick. It's like a midlife crisis but with hiking boots. I put on my shoes and walked 2 miles through the neighborhood. The October air was cold enough to sting my face. It felt clean, honest, real. Midweek, she weaponized concern, shifted tactics again. You seem unhappy lately. Is it work stress? Is it something I did? Talk to me about what's going on. I'm clear, I said, folding laundry with methodical precision. That's different from unhappy. Clear about what exactly? What I will and won't do going forward. I'll listen. I'll compromise when it's mutual and makes sense for both of us. I won't respond to tests designed to see if I'll jump through hoops. The word tests landed like a stone in still water. Her eyelids flinched almost imperceptibly. You're imagining things that aren't there. Creating problems. Maybe, I said, and called my brother about that fishing trip we always talked about but never chose, never prioritized. Booked the cabin for early November. I still did all the normal tasks, maintained the household we'd built. Took out trash, replaced air filters, fixed the cabinet hinge that had been sticking for weeks. But I refused to be steered by artificial scarcity, by the threat of withdrawn affection. She kept selling drought, rationing water. I started carrying my own supply. Next Saturday, she arranged dinner with a couple who mistake conflict for interesting conversation, who turn every meal into a performance of their dysfunctional marriage. I said I'd pass, stated it simply. It'll look bad if you don't come. They'll think something's wrong with us. To whom will it look bad? And why do I care what they think about decisions I make for my own well-being? No answer to that. After she left, I cooked salmon with lemon and herbs, FaceTimed my nephew about his science project, fell asleep reading a book I'd bought 6 months ago and never opened. She came home late, the smell of wine and perfume preceding her, climbed into bed without comment. The silence wasn't cold anymore. It was honest, and honesty felt like relief. Pressure built differently over the next weeks. Less smug superiority, more genuine uncertainty. She tried a direct appeal one evening, a new strategy. We should schedule a weekend away. Reset everything. Get back to who we used to be. I'm not against the idea, I said carefully. But a weekend's just fresh paint if the foundation underneath is cracked and unstable. What foundation are you talking about? Respect isn't conditional on compliance. And closeness isn't currency to be traded for behavior modification. She stared at the coffee table, at the books stacked there that neither of us had read. The old lever had stopped working, and she could feel it. The first real change was subtraction, removal. I removed the lever entirely from her hands. At night, I read on my side of the bed, lamp low, while she scrolled her phone. When thoughts wandered toward bargaining, toward wondering if I should try harder, I redirected them back to the facts. She noticed by the second evening of this new pattern. Hand on my shoulder, playful tone re-engaged, the silk robe deployed with strategic precision. I smiled, asked how her day went, engaged her as a person. Gym sessions before sunrise became non-negotiable routine. The quiet weight room at 5:30 was pure relief. No commentary, no subtle tests, no negotiations. Just gravity telling the truth, just iron that didn't play games. By week's end, I was sleeping deeper than I had in months. That alone told me how much mental bandwidth I'd been spending navigating the maze of her moods, anticipating her reactions. I rebalanced my calendar with surgical precision. Lunch with my brother Wednesdays, marked as non-negotiable recurring meeting. Friday morning coffee with an old buddy from college I'd drifted away from. Saturday hikes locked in, planned weeks ahead. I just stopped canceling my own life for hers. She tried pulling me back with nostalgia, with memory as manipulation. The playlist from our first year together. Her favorite whiskey that we used to share. Old inside jokes deployed like passwords to a system I'd abandoned. I laughed at the right moments, thanked her genuinely, returned to my spreadsheet tracking household projects. When she texted midday selfies captioned, "Miss me already," I answered professionally, "In a meeting with a client. We'll call you after." When she sent a calendar invite titled Reset Weekend, with a luxury cabin already researched, I accepted with a note, "Happy to discuss terms and expectations first." She ignored the note entirely and continued browsing luxury accommodations with hot tubs and couples massages. I let it sit there, unresolved. When she went cold after a decision she didn't like, some small thing that went my way instead of hers, I didn't patch it desperately. I didn't rush to fix the temperature. I let normal life sound like itself, dishes, laundry, paying bills. Work sharpened without the constant weight of domestic appeasement. I told a difficult client our team wouldn't absorb their rush fees for poor planning on their end. Offered the real timeline, real cost, real consequences. The client respected the boundary. Paid the fee. Thanked me for the clarity. She escalated to proximity, to physical presence as strategy. Movie night on the couch, her leg finding mine with seeming casualness. My body had muscle memory of being rewarded for caving, for abandoning my position. But memory can be retrained through consistent new data. When she leaned in during a quiet scene, I let it be what it was, present contact, small and real, not a contract for future compliance. She withdrew first, visibly surprised that the old formula didn't work. I made one symbolic move that week, set up a second pillow and blanket on the office couch. I didn't sleep there, didn't make threats. Just made it ready, available. Knowing I could choose space without theater, without drama, made the bedroom feel less like a negotiation table. There was a moment midweek that could have undone everything I'd built. She came home in a dress that made the room go quiet, that reminded me of everything I'd found attractive about her in the beginning. Stood in the kitchen doorway and smiled, not performed, just smiled. I stood up from the table, walked to her, kissed her forehead gently. "You look incredible. Really beautiful." Then I went back to chopping vegetables for dinner. She watched from the doorway, waiting for the invitation that never came, for the pursuit that used to follow that smile. Later, while I cooked, she pressed into my back, wrapped her arms around me. I covered her hands with mine, felt the warmth of her against me, breathed once deeply. Then stepped aside to drain the pasta, to finish what I'd started. Control had been replaced with contact. Simple contact wasn't enough to rebuild what we'd lost. Quiet boundaries accumulated like compound interest. I stopped debriefing my entire day to someone who weaponized details in future arguments. Moved my running shoes to the front door where I'd see them first thing. Replaced the burned-out porch bulb without asking if the color temperature matched her aesthetic vision. Scheduled a dental cleaning I'd postponed 3 times. One night, she broke pattern entirely. No performance, no strategy, just a straight question delivered across the dark bedroom. "Why don't you want me anymore?" I considered the question carefully before answering. I want a marriage that doesn't use closeness as leverage, that doesn't trade affection for compliance. If that's not what we have, I won't pretend it is just to keep the peace. She said nothing for a long time. I listened to her breathing, waited. By month's end, my days had shape and structure that didn't wobble with her moods. She learned gradually that I would be kind without being compliant, that decency didn't require surrender. That's what strategic withdrawal actually is. Stop the chase, stop performing the scripts, let your actions tell the only story that matters. Without a player chasing, without someone running the maze, the game gets very quiet. Guilt arrived first in her new repertoire. She stood in the office doorway one evening, backlit and vulnerable, said she felt shut out of my life now. The old script called for me to apologize immediately for changing, for growing, for wanting respect. I adjusted my behavior because the way we were operating had turned into a negotiation I never consented to, never signed up for when we got married. She frowned, processing. Asked if we could just start over, wipe the slate clean and go back. "We could start honest," I said. "That's different from starting over and repeating the same patterns." When guilt didn't land, didn't move me, she tried seduction with more focus. New perfume that probably cost a week of groceries, late-night whispers, her thigh pressed against mine on the couch during movies. I kept contact as contact, present, real, human. Nothing more, nothing transactional. Then blame arrived like clockwork. She told me my withdrawal was cruel, that a real husband would fight for the marriage, would engage with her attempts. I'm being precise about what I need. I'm refusing to be measured by scarcity, to live like affection is rationed based on my behavior. I let it sit in the air between us. Arguments that need your defensive heat can't survive without that fuel. Then came panic, genuine fear breaking through. Sudden invitations to double dates we'd never discussed. Quality time plans that required me to cancel commitments I'd already made. A rushed weekend trip idea with immediate booking pressure. I'm open to spending time together once we're aligned on basic terms of respect. What terms? You keep saying that, but... I repeated them calmly, like reading a shipping manifest. Respect that's not contingent on compliance. Closeness that's not currency traded for desired behavior. We're making this more complicated than it needs to be. Marriage is supposed to be simple. Simple's easy when you're the one holding the remote control. Her friends noticed the shift, started intervening. Began texting me directly with concern. Everything okay with you two? We're sorting some things out. Thanks for checking in. At a birthday dinner for someone in her circle, one of them cornered me by the bar, whispered that I seemed different, in a good way more present. Veronica heard it from across the room. I could tell by how her posture changed. At a neighbor's barbecue the following weekend, she told a group I'd been emotionally distant lately and needed to relearn how to show affection properly. Our neighbor Angela, who's been married 30 years, asked calmly, "Is that something mutual you're both working on?" The table went quiet. Nobody had expected the question turned around. Later, walking home in the dusk, she accused me of letting people think badly of her, of not defending her to her own friends. I let them think for themselves, draw their own conclusions based on what they observe. Her mother FaceTimed 2 days later, clearly briefed, asked if we were okay with obvious concern. We're recalibrating how we relate to each other. I'm committed to a healthy outcome, together or apart. Those are the only two options I'm willing to consider. Marriage is about working through difficult things, Richard. Completely agree. Working isn't the same as bargaining for basic respect. Those are different activities. The most revealing day came mid-November when she booked a luxury spa resort last minute, texted me the confirmation with a winking emoji and hearts. No discussion, no mutual planning. I replied, "Looks nice. We can go once we address the underlying issue the trip would temporarily hide." An hour later, "Forget it then. Just forget the whole thing." I went to the gym, sent my brother a fishing license link for our December trip. By late afternoon, she sent a long message about the importance of compromise in marriage, about meeting halfway. I wrote back after considering my words. Fully agree on compromise. I won't compromise on being treated like an actual partner with equal voice. She left it on read. The checkmark turned blue, stayed blue. 2 days later, she swung back toward sweetness with renewed intensity. Candlelight dinner, reservations at a place that books 3 weeks out minimum. At the table, she reached across for my hand, held it gently. We should get back to us. To who we were. Which version of us? The one where affection signals the start of negotiation, or the one where affection is normal language between two adults who respect each other? She pulled her hand back slowly, folded her napkin. The waiter arrived with water glasses, broke the tension. I still did everything my name was attached to. Paid bills, handled repairs, maintained the house. But I didn't participate in reenactments of a script I'd rejected. That's what ultimately broke the game's engine. At her sister's barbecue in early December, someone made a tired, wife controls the husband joke. It landed completely flat, died in uncomfortable silence. My brother-in-law asked about a trail system I'd mentioned. We talked elevation gain, winter hiking preparation gear. Veronica watched without inserting herself, without narrating me to the group. In the car driving home, "You've become aloof, detached from everything. I've become congruent. My actions match my values now. That probably feels like aloofness if you're used to me contorting myself into shapes that pleased you." Her panic peaked on a Wednesday night. She came to bed late, sat on the edge without getting under the covers. "What do you actually need from me? Tell me clearly." I kept my voice even, factual. "I need partnership without performance art. If you want me as I actually am. If you don't, say it clearly. But don't price intimacy like it's a commodity." She stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Nodded once, small, almost invisible. Next morning, she canceled brunch with Rachel without consulting me first. Stayed home. Asked how my vendor call went. Normal questions. Real ones, not strategic. After lunch, I could see her getting restless. I could feel the old engine trying to turn over, the familiar patterns asserting themselves. She almost reached for the lever, and visibly stopped herself. That counted for something. That mattered. A week of small resets followed, daily recalibrations. She initiated a walk around the neighborhood without her phone. Said yes to my suggestion for dinner. Touched my arm once with no visible agenda attached. Then a message from her friend group inviting her out to remind you who you are, get the old Veronica back. She looked at me across the kitchen island, phone in hand. I might go to this. Girls' night. Enjoy yourself if you do. Hope you have fun. She studied my face carefully, looking for the tell, the crack. Found nothing, no leverage point. Put the phone down on the counter. That night, she didn't go. Instead sat on the back steps watching December stars. When I joined her with 2 mugs of tea, she asked quietly if I wanted honey in mine. Sure. Thanks. It was almost nothing. It was everything shifting. The game hadn't disappeared because I won some contest. It withered because I stopped feeding it energy. Saturday morning light came through clean windows. I'd slept well, solidly. She looked like she'd mentally rehearsed 5 different conversation openings. I'm putting my terms on the table, I said before she could start. Not to threaten you. To be completely clear about what I need. She nodded, wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. 1. Partnership without performance. No more using closeness as leverage for behavioral control. 2. Mutual planning. My calendar isn't open inventory for you to fill. 3. We fix what's underneath, the actual foundation, not just the optics people see. She sat very still, processing. And if I can't meet those terms? Then we separate. With respect and decency. But I won't live inside a negotiation disguised as a marriage again. I let the quiet sit between us, hold its weight. I don't know who taught me that was power, she said finally. Maybe I didn't want to feel small or powerless. You're not small. You're capable and strong. You just kept choosing the smallest tool in the box. Wednesday night the following week, she put her phone in a drawer at dinner. Can we try having a conversation where no one keeps score? Where we just talk? Yeah, we can do that. We talked about small betrayals that had accumulated. Cancelled plans that sent messages. Jokes that land like jabs even when wrapped in laughter. She admitted she'd learned to negotiate because negotiating felt safer than simply asking for what she needed. I told her I'd learned to appease because appeasing felt safer than the possibility of leaving. By Friday, she asked if I'd join her for counseling. Someone practical, not someone who just validates feelings. I said yes with one condition. No theater in the therapist's room. No theater at home. Just honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. We did the actual work for 3 weeks straight. She apologized once, without asterisks, without qualifications or, but you also additions. I accepted without writing a manifesto in response. In bed, we started simple and small. Hands touching. Actual conversation. No script, no performance. It felt like meeting someone new. It also felt fragile, like something that could break if we moved wrong. Then her friends planned another night out specifically, to get the old you back, remind you who you were. She showed me the text thread. Go if you want to. I mean that. She looked for the old tell, the sign I was testing her. Found nothing but honesty. Said she'd pass on the invitation. The group chat went quiet after that. Sunday afternoon, we sat in the car outside the grocery store, neither of us moving to get out. Do you want this marriage? Or do you want the version where I'm a shape you move around the board? Her answer came clean and direct. I want the marriage. The real one. And I'm willing to feel stupid while I learn how to do it properly. I believed it enough to keep trying. 2 months later, I realized I'd stopped checking the emotional climate before I smiled or laughed. We hiked without keeping score of who suggested it. Argued about a lamp purchase, solved it in 20 minutes with actual compromise. We didn't transform into some couple who posts inspirational content about doing the work for social media validation. We became 2 people who can say no without losing yes. Who can disagree without threatening the foundation. That's better than romantic. It's sustainable, and sustainability is what builds a life. There's an alternate timeline where she picked her crowd over our marriage. Where I pack a bag methodically and leave quietly before dawn. I know that version intimately because I kept it real, kept it present, kept an apartment listing link in my notes app. Kept my head clear enough to walk away if respect didn't show up consistently. The option made me honest. It made her honest, too. Freedom to leave created freedom to stay authentically. One evening months later, we ran into Angela at the farmer's market. She looked at both of us, smiled with genuine warmth. Whatever you two are doing differently, keep doing it. You both look lighter. Veronica laughed, small, genuine, without needing to add commentary. We walked home through cold March air. She paused at our front door, key in hand. You know you could have left, right? You could have actually done it. I did leave, I said quietly. Emotionally, mentally, I left the old contract. That's why I could stay for a new one. Respect isn't a clause you add to a marriage later, an amendment you negotiate after years of dysfunction. It's the ground you build on from the beginning, or it's quicksand that swallows everything eventually. The lever she thought controlled me is scrap metal now, recycled into something neither of us recognizes. In its place, two people who show up without a price tag attached to their presence. If the old game ever tries to creep back, resurrect itself from muscle memory, I won't negotiate about it. Won't beg for basic decency like it's a rare commodity. I'll wish her well with genuine care and walk out with my name, my peace, and my non-negotiable Tuesday nights intact. Because staying is a choice I make daily, not a sentence I'm serving. And respect is not negotiable under any circumstances. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.